Many thanks for joining us this morning. Good morning. This is Daybreak with me, Lillian Muli, and we will be taking a look at the dailies, just looking at some of the headline stories there. And with me in studio is Gloria Oroba. She is a public policy analyst, and we are also joined this morning by Alex Matere, who is a youth leader. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I want to direct your attention to our headline story, and I think it's the one in the Nation. Both are on the IEBC, but let's begin with the IEBC saying that they will not be having a hard copy of registered voters at polling stations this time round. This in a bid to lock out ghost voters. Some of the presidential candidates have had issue and have taken issue with this, saying that there have been issues previously with the areas that lack the 3G connectivity. Raila Odinga specifically saying that he is concerned that some areas might have network issues and that this could lead to low transmission of results. I'll start with you, Gloria. What do you make of all of this? During the simulation exercise by IEBC, we saw some issues with the numbers coming in very slowly, and there were concerns over the fact that there was a very slow transmission of these results. So what do you make of the presidential candidates, or at least some of them, and civil society groups having issue with the fact that the IEBC says that there will be no hard copy of registered voters?
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I think one of the things that it is clear with Kenyans is that they have lost trust in IEBC, because I don't think it's about the logistics around not having a physical copy. I mean, if we trusted that you know, the digitization of the voter systems and everything were 100%, you know, tight, and the whole process was transparent, then people would not be questioning, like, you know, why don't we have physical copies? But then, you know, previously we've had, in every polling center, you have a list of all the voters. It's actually put out in the polling center, and you are able to verify that at least a day or 2 days before that, okay, my name is there, so come the day of the election, I'm going to vote. So I'm wondering if that is actually also going to be taken away, because we saw millions of voters having been transferred by apparently an error or a loophole or whatever they called it. And for instance, I'm registered to vote in Bobasi constituency in Kisii County, and if I did not have that assurance that my name is there, you can imagine getting to the polling center and being told, actually, your name is not here, your name is perhaps in Kilimani, Dagoretti, and you have to travel back. So I don't see why they should not have a physical copy, if you ask me, because it's literally an expense in terms of, because if it's online, it's just a matter of printing it and, you know, disseminating it. Unless, of course, there is a plan to rig the election. And unless, again, of course, just like we are still saying the servers were never opened, you know, people will always question the idea of, I feel like tulishindwa lakini we are not quite sure because ABCD happened. So I mean, if they can, you know, have the digital version and still have the physical version, just to give that to make people trust the process. What we're looking for this election is that we trust the process, that most of the steps that are being followed are transparent, and maybe that physical register being taken away is a form of someone saying, like, Mora mnatu feature, we want to see who's actually voting here.
Alex, do you agree? IEBC says all voters will be identified electronically through the KIMS, and this is once again just to lock out ghost voters, to take away any integrity issues that have been seen in previous exercises. So the need for a backup, is this necessary in your opinion?
Top of the morning, Lillian. One, I think I'd like to concur with what presidential candidate Raila has already indicated. And when he appeared before the IEBC, when he was presenting his papers, there are a number of issues that he raised. Part of that is actually what Mr. Chebukati is currently trying to address. That in as far as the voter register is concerned, how are we going to approach it? Are we going to go with the digital version, the KIMS kit, or we are going to have a complementary version, a physical, you know, voter register, where you can also check and verify that you are on the voter register before casting your vote? And we seem to, or rather IEBC seem not to be learning from history, because these are some of the things that have affected our electoral process for quite some time. If you look back from 2007, when Raila Odinga was voting in Kibra, you remember there was a circus during the election day. He appeared in his polling station, and his name was missing in the register. 2013 also, there was something similar to that. And therefore, when we went to 2017, it was assumed that even if we are going to have, you know, a fully digitized voting system together with the transmission of results, together with the aspect of the voter register, we needed to have a complementary physical form. And I think that is what Kenyans are insisting. And if you look at the front page of The Nation, that is what all the political leaders, I think, are insisting. They are saying that even if you are going to have a digital version, can we have a physical version? Secondly, and closely linked to that, is the aspect that we have to be very honest with the reality of this country. That there are some places that don't have 3G connectivity. You go to Mandera, you go to Lokichogio in Turkana, you go to some parts of Migori, you go to some parts of the coast region in Lamu. We might not have that. So what are you telling the voters? Yes,
but the IEBC has said that in those areas, the Commission will issue satellite modems for the exercise. So it is an issue or a concern that they have addressed, and they're confident that these areas will not compromise the exercise in any way or the simulation of the results.
About the surety and the sincerity of IEBC in terms of deploying the satellites so that we can have the 3G connectivity is under question itself. And Lillian, I'd want also to remind you that about 2 weeks ago, they tried doing a simulation. Imagine the simulation itself failed. So what are we talking about? Because even after the failure of the simulation itself, we haven't had another session where they have said that we are now going to try another simulation that will be flawless, that will be seamless, that will ensure that results are flowing in from across all the polling stations in the country. And therefore, I think the meeting that Chebukati has called with the presidential candidates is timely. Let us be clear, let us be objective. For the first time, let us stand for Kenya, because we are going into an election that is definitely going to be closely contested. And we don't want assumptions or, you know, a grapevine that voter registers are not up to date, or I appear in a polling station and my name is missing, or my name is in the physical form, if that case would be, and not in the digital form. So all these loopholes and blind spots have to be covered now in the next 40-something days before we go to the elections.
In the next 40-something days. And the 3 agenda items that will be in the meeting between the IEBC and the presidential candidates is the printed register of voters, the election results path, and harmonizing campaign schedules for presidential candidates. Let's begin with the printed register of voters. Gloria, key in the agenda of talks between the presidential candidates and the IEBC, in terms of the printed register of voters, do you feel that the IEBC has been transparent enough as regards the number of registered voters, looking at gender, looking at the youth factor as well? When we talk about the printed register of voters, what are the key issues that you feel should be addressed in this meeting?
First of all, there has been a growth on the registered voters, and there's talk on ascertaining that that growth is real, you know, that when we are being told we have gone up in Nyanza by a couple of millions of votes, we need to be sure that those votes are actually they're real. The only way to ascertain that you're saying in a stronghold of a certain presidential candidate we have added 1-point-something million votes, just print for us that register so that we can see for sure that there are no ghost voters, so that we can see for sure that not the dead are not going to vote. That's one thing. The second thing, I think we'll be going up in the number of polling centers, and that's a huge thing. I participated in the party primaries, and I can tell you one of the things that we kept on fighting about before the party primaries amongst the candidates and the political party, the NEB in charge of the primaries, was that it has to be fair. The new polling centers that are being introduced, it has to be fair, because you'll find that some of the polling centers are actually, you can't reach them, you know, like from Kisii County, in Bobasi constituency, we had polling centers where you literally had to climb up a hill, like up so many, you know, a long distance. And those are the ones where my competitors were trying to say, yes, let's use those ones, because of course they know the voter turnout would be low. So the issue of the new polling centers, by the way, because of the increase of the registered voters, that also needs to be transparent. We need to have, it actually, I think, I'm sure they are going to gazette it, but we need to also sensitize the electorate about it, because I think we are going to have about maybe 700 new polling centers. I'm not quite sure, but based on the percentages of growth that we've seen, we will have a couple of new polling centers. And we also need to understand how they are going to be incorporated in, like in terms of now the whole process. For instance, you'll get that you've been registered in a new polling center because of the increase in vote of your area, and you haven't been notified. You see, so because if I registered, particularly, let's say if Citizen was a polling center, if I registered to vote here, then my assumption is I voted there last time, you know, so I'm going to vote there again. I haven't changed. That's my residence. Then I go there and I'm told there's a new center and we've been split, and so some of us are here. I think that's a key thing. But otherwise, to be honest, the issue is not about the details. It's just the trust that we have lost with IEBC. And I feel that is what people are calling upon. Be transparent, you know, just assure us that these whole processes are not going to be rigged, or they are not flawed, or they are not in favor of one candidate. You know, we've seen the issue on just minimum qualifications of the gubernatorial, the candidates, you know. We've seen IEBC being, you know, biased towards one particular side of the political divide. The issue on academic certificates, for instance, has also pushed people not to really think that IEBC is independent, because they're thinking there are some candidates out here who no one is really pressing on to say that your academic qualifications are actually fake, or this or that. Or some people have said, you know, for instance, we want to see the classmates of Raila Odinga. But on the other hand, when they come to this other side, it's like, you know, so I think it's an issue of trust.
Right.
All these other things are just because, you know, when you don't trust an institution, you're constantly trying to query every single step that they take. Yeah.
And another headline story, Alex, is the numbers of the 2022 race, and this being a key agenda item in the meeting between the IEBC and the 4 presidential candidates. We're looking at the numbers of the 2022 race, looking at areas like the Rift Valley having the highest number, looking at central Kenya as being a key area to look into, as well as Nairobi County, also very critical in this electoral process. So in terms of the IEBC's meeting with these presidential candidates, and now looking at the voter register and the numbers per county, what are your thoughts around the numbers that we're seeing and how this election is likely to play out based on the numbers?
Thank you so much, Lillian. If you look at the numbers that have been projected by IEBC, I think this election is as good as called. Because if you look at Nairobi County with an estimated 2.4 million voters, let's say even if the voter turnout will be between 70 to 75, giving that would have more or less something like 2 million votes, it is highly unlikely that the side of Kenya Kwisha would garner more than half of that number. And therefore, because of...
You mean Kenya Kwanza?
Kenya Kwanza, all right. I don't know. Sometimes we are carried away by the cliche whether it's Kenya Kwisha or Kenya Kwanza. But if it's Kenya Kwanza, I don't think there's any possibility that in Nairobi County they can have more than 1 million votes. And therefore, Nairobi in itself, being one of the determinant counties, if Raila Odinga can manage to get 70% of the votes in Nairobi, it will mean that he already opens a lead of more than 800,000. If he does that, then for you to consolidate and be able to bridge the gap of only 800,000, you might need about 4 or 5 counties from Rift Valley County to be able to bridge that gap. And if you look at all the other strongholds, if you look at Western, for instance, the counties from Western, about 2.2 million. If you look at Nyanza, if you look at Coast, that are traditional, you know, his support base. I think, Lillian, at this point, we are as good as saying that this election is called, and it will be very, very difficult, if I may say, for William Ruto to have a clear contest with Raila Odinga in as far as this election is concerned.
Gloria, are you of the same opinion? The fact that some of these historical battlegrounds are clearly coming up in terms of numbers, and what we're seeing here, we're seeing, for instance, in the upcoming presidential election, counties like in Mount Kenya region and the Rift Valley carrying the bulk of the voting population there. Historically, just looking at previous elections, how do you see this playing out? And just also just going back to Alex's sentiments here, do you see things, or rather a replication of issues that happened traditionally in previous races, based on these numbers that we're seeing?
You know, first of all, I'd say if you can look at the regions where the numbers have grown, we have two strongholds. We have Rift Valley and we have Mount Kenya. When I say we, I mean Kenya Kwanza. So in Rift Valley, from 2017, we had 4.6 million votes, and now we have 5.3. So that means we've gained about 690,000 in Rift Valley. And in Mount Kenya, from 4.1 in 2017, we are now at is it around 4.8? So that's around 710,000. Those are two strongholds already that Kenya Kwanza have. And you know, most of the time when people tell you that this time Baba na Mama watashinda, I always ask them, let's just go by layman's maths, you know, not even the figures and the statisticians and all that. How many strongholds does Raila Odinga hold right now? As at now, actually, what he can call a stronghold, and not so confidently, is Luo Nyanza. Yeah? When you go to Mombasa, where Raila got 78% of the votes, it's no longer a stronghold of Raila. It's completely been infiltrated by Kenya Kwanza and actually local parties, which have decided that now, this time, we are going to try and be independent and stuff like that. When you look at where else would you say that there was a strong... Nairobi, by the way, is not a stronghold of Raila. Let us just be serious about that. It's not a stronghold. It has never been. It has always been split. It has never been a stronghold of Raila Odinga. So as we are talking about Mount Kenya being a stronghold, because we have actually, and we can't, it's not even an issue of discussing. Mount Kenya is a stronghold of Kenya Kwanza. It's actually completely Hustler Nation movement. You look at Rift Valley, that's a stronghold. We have made such headway in areas like Kisii County. We have made serious headways in coast. When you talk about, yesterday you saw what happened in the Azimio rally, yeah? And, you know, I know that they tried to report it, that it was infights among the Azimio political parties, but really...
we'll get
that was
one of our areas of conversation.
But really, that is, if they consider that a stronghold, they could not even put a rally together. I can tell you that that is also a Hustler Nation stronghold. So, for me, I think, before we even look at the numbers of the new registered voters and stuff, just looking at the bigger picture is, I would like to know, other than Luo Nyanza, what is Raila's other stronghold? Yeah.
But even as we talk strongholds, Gloria, there is the economic agenda, the youth, the gender card, issues that are playing out here that have nothing to do with the numbers and the historical issues and the historical battlegrounds that we're looking at. Are we likely to see a shift based on these issues, based on the fact that, for instance, there's been a drop in the registered number of youth? The youth have not registered to vote. And then we're looking at the economic issues as well, and the gender card as well. When we look at the youth, for instance, the female voters, there's been a sharp decline in the number of registered voters. So even as we talk about these historical issues and these battlegrounds, these are issues that we cannot ignore even as we look at this.
I was actually going to tell you, this is the conventional way, that the past ways of how we were looking at the mathematics of how you're going to win an election. It was region-based, it was tribal-based, and it was like, you know, coasts, Luo Nyanza, whatever. But now we have other strongholds. For instance, yesterday you saw that my party leader, William Ruto, actually met with a constituency of strongholds, teachers, you know, people within the education space. And you've seen that now we're trying to move away from just region-based politics and tribal politics, and it's issue-based. That's why we had the Women Charter, for instance, launched, because it's not about one woman, it's about more than 40 million women who are in this country. And so what do you have in store for the women of this country? You saw that other than the economic forums that Kenya Kwanza has been going around selling, we are also looking at specific constituencies of people, like the people with disability, which is also another group that came forward, and we signed a charter with them, and we said, you know, for the thousands of people with disability in this country, this is also what we are offering. So at the end of the day, the strongholds that were perceived in the past about, you know, the regions and the tribes, they're slowly being disintegrated and being put into now specific, let me say, constituencies of people. People with disability, teachers, Mama Mboga, which is what we're saying, the manufacturing and stuff like that.
First,
that's actually where this election is going.
Let me give a very polite rejoinder and also try to enlighten Gloria. If you look at page 7, look at the numbers. And sometimes I wish I would have carried my calculator. Because even if you want to say that Rift Valley is a stronghold for UDA, you take North Rift and South and other Rift Valley counties with a registered number of voters about 3.6 million. It is very clear that out of the 3.6 million, Raila can easily pull 1.5 million out of that, because he has already headways in Kajiado, in Narok, in Samburu, in Turkana, and probably half of West Pokot, leaving William Ruto with only a paltry almost 2 million or so. So you even realize that what they perceive in themselves as being their stronghold is actually a battleground. If you go to Coast, I think Coast is locked, because historically you know how they have been voting, and you know the issues that have actually been influencing their voting patterns have not been addressed. Talk about the land issue. We have seen the president coming robustly, even yesterday, launching about 1 million title deeds. Those are some of the issues that are very pertinent to the Coast people, and they want to see that even if there's going to be a transition in terms of government, this government that is coming to succeed the government of President Uhuru Kenyatta also addresses and continues probably giving titles and sorting out the issues of land. Look at Kisii, Kisii and Nyamira counties with about 960,000 votes. I think that one is locked under Azimio. And therefore, even if the battleground that they're talking about in Daily Nation, and I really doubt if it is well informed, a county like Nzoia, where I come from, I can tell you without a doubt that Raila Odinga controls about 70%, and therefore it ceases to be a battleground. And as I said in my initial comments, this election, I think, has already been called. If we look at the numbers, this election has already been called. Just also to top up, Lillian, before I allow my colleague, even if you're talking about issues, you know they haven't even released their manifesto yet. What we all know about Kenya Kwanza, it's about the bottom-up narrative that no one seems, you know, to put his finger on what it really means and explain on how it's going to impact on the lives of Kenyans. They're talking about Mama Mboga, they're talking about Boda Boda. But you hear Gloria trying to change the narrative to talk about, you know, teachers, you know, nurses, trade unionists, and what have you. And this is a narrative that they already lost, because for them, they thought that once they have a closey and flossy narrative that can be able to hoodwink the lower class in our society, then they could probably have the numbers. But I think they are coming, they have already smelled the coffee, and they realize that they also need to ensure that the youth, even those ones who are looking at getting employment, those ones who are in the university, those ones who are in tertiary institutions, have a space in the government that is coming. And therefore you see them now not deciding whether they want to continue pushing the wheelbarrow, or now they want to empower the teachers to be able to move forward.
Hold that thought, Alex. We are back with more, and Gloria will be responding to that, even as we look at the number of registered voters. When we look at the youth having dropped significantly, we'll be looking into issues around that, as well as other news making headlines at this hour. We're back with more in just a bit.